The acrid smell of burning fabric hit me like a punch to the gut, pulling me from a restless sleep. My bedroom window glowed orange, and as I stumbled outside, I saw my clothes, every dress, every blouse, every memory engulfed in flames on the front lawn. My sister-in-law, Karen, stood there, her silhouette stark against the firelight, a smug grin twisting her face as she tossed my favorite scarf into the blaze. I froze, my bare feet sinking into the dew-soaked grass, heart hammering. This wasn't just a prank. It was war. Karen had always been a thorn in my side, but this was a betrayal that cut deeper than I could have imagined. My husband, Tom, stood a few feet away, his eyes darting between us, his silence louder than the crackling flames. I thought he'd defend me, rush to douse the fire, or at least yell at his sister. Instead, he just watched, hands in his pockets, like he was waiting for the show to end. I'd built this life with Tom over a decade, pouring my soul into our home, our marriage, our dreams. The house was mine, bought with my inheritance, my sweat, my late nights working as a freelance graphic designer to pay off the mortgage early. Karen, Tom's older sister, had always eyed it with a hunger that made my skin crawl. She'd drop hints about family assets or how it's only fair for her to have a stake since she was blood. I brushed it off, thinking it was just her greed talking. But that night, as my wardrobe burned, I realized this was no idle jealousy. This was a calculated move. Karen, what the hell are you doing? I screamed, my voice cracking as I lunged toward the fire, desperate to save something, anything. She stepped in front of me, her arms crossed, her eyes glinting with malice. Those rags didn't suit you, Emily, she sneered. You don't deserve them, just like you don't deserve this house. I turned to Tom, expecting outrage, expecting him to be my ally. But he just shrugged, muttering, she's just upset. Let it go. Let it go. My clothes, my memories, my dignity were turning to ash, and he wanted me to let it go. That was the moment I knew something was broken, not just between me and Karen, but between me and Tom. The next morning, I woke to find Karen in my kitchen, sipping coffee like she owned the place. Her audacity was breathtaking. She'd been staying with us for 3 months, ever since her latest get-rich-quick scheme failed, leaving her broke and homeless. I'd let her in out of pity, against my better judgment. Now, she was acting like the queen of my castle, and Tom wasn't doing a damn thing to stop her. Morning, Emily, she said, her voice dripping with false sweetness. You look tired. Rough night. I clenched my fists, biting back a retort. I needed answers, not a fight. Why did you burn my clothes? Karen, what's your problem? She leaned back, smirking. You've got too much. Emily, that house, those fancy dresses, it's not fair. Tom and I grew up with nothing. You think you're better than us. This house is mine, I said, my voice low but firm. I paid for it. Not you. Not Tom. Me. Her eyes narrowed. For now? That was when I noticed the papers on the counter. Legal documents, half hidden under a stack of bills. My heart sank as I scanned them. Deeds, transfer forms, all in Tom's name. My house, my home. They were trying to take it from me. I confronted Tom that evening, the papers clutched in my trembling hands. What is this? I demanded, shoving them under his nose. He wouldn't meet my eyes, his jaw tight, his excuses flimsy. It's just a precaution, he mumbled. In case something happens to you. It's for the family. The family? I laughed, bitter and hollow. You mean you and Karen? You think I'm stupid? He sighed, running a hand through his hair, a gesture I used to find endearing but now made me want to scream. Karen thinks it's best if the house is in my name. You know, for legal reasons. She's family. She's just looking out for us. I stared at him, the man I'd loved for 10 years, The man I'd trusted with my heart. My future. He wasn't just complicit, was part of it. The betrayal stung worse than the fire. Karen had lit the match, but Tom had poured the gasoline. I didn't sleep that night. My mind raced, piecing together the last few months, Karen's constant presence, Tom's late-night whispers with her, the way he'd stopped talking about our future. They were plotting, and I was the obstacle. But I wasn't going to let them win. The next day, I called my lawyer, Sarah, a no-nonsense woman who'd helped me with my inheritance years ago. I told her everything: Karen's fire, Tom's betrayal, the documents. She listened, her voice calm but firm. Emily, you need to protect yourself. Now. She laid out my options. I could fight to keep the house, drag Tom and Karen through court, or I could take control in a way they'd never expect. The idea hit me like a lightning bolt: sell the house. Not to them, not to anyone they could manipulate, but to a stranger, someone who'd take it far out of their reach. It was drastic, but it felt right. This house was my heart, but it was also my power, and I wasn't going to let them steal it. I spent the next week in secret, meeting with Sarah, contacting a real estate agent, and quietly gathering my most precious belongings: photos, my grandmother's locket, my laptop with years of design work. Karen and Tom didn't suspect a thing, too busy scheming, thinking they'd already won. Karen kept parading around, dropping hints about redecorating my home. Tom kept avoiding my eyes, his guilt a silent confession. By the end of the week, I had a buyer, a young couple, eager to start their life in a home I'd once loved. The deal was set to close in days. I didn't tell Tom or Karen. Let them think they were in control. Let them think they'd broken me. The morning of the closing, I packed a single suitcase. Karen was out, probably scheming her next move. Tom was at work, oblivious. I stood in the living room, the walls echoing with memories: our first dance as a married couple, late-night talks, the dreams we'd built. Tears stung my eyes, but I pushed them back. This wasn't the end. It was a beginning. I signed the papers at Sarah's office, the pen steady in my hand. The house was gone, sold for a fair price. The money wired to a new account Tom and Karen knew nothing about. I felt a weight lift, a clarity I hadn't known in months. They wanted to take everything from me, but I'd taken it back: me power, my future. When I returned home, Karen was there, lounging on my couch. She looked up, surprised to see my suitcase. Going somewhere, Emily? She asked, her tone mocking. I smiled, cold and sharp. Yeah, away from you. Her smirk faltered as I dropped the bombshell. The house is sold. Karen, it's gone. You and Tom get nothing. Her face drained of color, her mouth opening and closing like a fish. You're lying, she sputtered. Check the records, I said, tossing her a copy of the sale agreement. It's done. She screamed, lunging for me, but I stepped back, calm, untouchable. Tom came home just then, his face crumpling as he saw the papers, as he realized what I'd done. Emily, why? He whispered. Because you betrayed me, I said, my voice steady. Both of you. I walked out, suitcase in hand, the fire of their greed snuffed out behind me. The road ahead was uncertain, but it was mine. And for the first time in months, I felt free. The air outside was crisp, the kind of autumn chill that bites at your skin but wakes you up. I stood on the sidewalk, my suitcase at my feet, the weight of my decision settling in. I'd sold my house, me sanctuary, my pride, and while it felt like liberation, it also felt like losing a piece of my soul. I didn't look back as I walked to my car, the engine humming to life as I drove toward a cheap motel on the edge of town. My phone buzzed incessantly, Tom's name flashing, then Karen's, then Tom's again. I silenced it, letting the quiet wrap around me like a shield. I needed space to think, to plan, to figure out who Emily was without that house, without Tom, without the life I'd thought was mine. At the motel, I checked in under a fake name, a trick Sarah had suggested to keep Karen and Tom off my trail. The room was small, the walls stained with years of neglect, but it was mine for now. I sat on the creaky bed, opened my laptop, and started transferring the sale money to a second account, one I'd set up in secret. Every click felt like a step toward reclaiming my life. My mind kept drifting back to Tom. How had we gotten here? We'd met in college. Two dreamers with big plans. He was charming, ambitious, the kind of guy who made you believe in forever. We'd built a life together, or so I thought. But the signs were there as growing distance. His deference to Karen, the way he'd stopped fighting for us. I'd ignored them, clinging to the idea of who he used to be. Now, I saw him clearly, a man too weak to stand up to his sister, too greedy to honor our vows. Karen was another story. She'd always been a leech, latching onto anyone with something to offer. When she moved in, I thought it was temporary, a chance to help family. But she'd wormed her way into our lives, poisoning Tom with her whispers of entitlement. Burning my clothes wasn't just spite, it was her way of marking her territory, of saying, "This is mine now." And Tom had let her. I spent the next few days laying low, meeting with Sarah to tie up loose ends. She was a godsend, her sharp mind cutting through my fog of hurt. "You've got the money, Emily," she said over coffee, her eyes steady. "You've got options. Where do you want to go?" I didn't know. The house had been my anchor, my proof that I could build something lasting. Without it, I felt unmoored, but also free. I could go anywhere, start over in a new city, maybe even a new country. The thought was terrifying, but it sparked something in me, a flicker of hope I hadn't felt in years. Meanwhile, Karen and Tom were unraveling. Sarah had a contact at the county records office who tipped us off. They'd gone to check the deed, only to confirm the sale was real. Karen had thrown a fit, screaming about lawsuits, about her house. Tom, apparently, just stood there, silent as ever. I almost pitied him almost. I started researching places to go. Seattle caught my eye, vibrant, creative, far enough from this small town to feel like a fresh start. I spent hours browsing apartments, imagining a new life where no one knew my story, where I could rebuild without Karen's shadow or Tom's betrayal. The money from the house gave me a cushion, enough to start over without scrambling. For the first time, I felt like I was choosing my future, not just surviving it. But Karen wasn't done. On the fourth day, she found me. I was at a diner, sipping coffee and scrolling through rental listings, when she stormed in, her face red with fury. "You think you can just walk away?" she hissed, slamming her hands on the table. Heads turned, but I stayed calm, my heart pounding, but my resolve ironclad. "Karen, it's over," I said, my voice low. "The house is gone. You lost. You had no right." She screamed, drawing more stairs. "That was Tom's house too. Our family's." "It was mine," I said, standing to meet her gaze. "And you tried to steal it. You burned my clothes. Karen, you crossed a line." She faltered, her bravado cracking. "You'll regret this." She spat, but there was fear in her eyes. She knew she'd overplayed her hand. I left the diner, my coffee cold but my spirit blazing. Karen's outburst only confirmed I'd done the right thing. She and Tom thought they could bully me, break me, take what was mine. But I was stronger than they realized. That night, I booked a one-way ticket to Seattle. The decision felt reckless, exhilarating, terrifying. I didn't know what awaited me, but I knew I couldn't stay here, in a town tainted by their greed. I packed my suitcase tighter, leaving behind anything that reminded me of Tom or Karen. The locket, my laptop, a few books, those were enough. As I lay in the motel bed, staring at the cracked ceiling, I thought about the woman I'd been a week ago. She was scared, trusting, tethered to a life that was crumbling. The woman I was now was different, bruised, but not broken. I'd lost my home, my marriage, but I'd gained something more, myself. The next morning, I drove to the airport, my heart a mix of grief and hope. Tom called again, leaving a voicemail I didn't listen to. I didn't need his apologies, his excuses. I needed a new start, and I was taking it. Seattle greeted me with rain, a soft drizzle that felt like a cleansing. I stepped off the plane, my suitcase lighter than my heart, and took a deep breath. This was it, me new beginning. My chance to rebuild without the ghosts of Karen and Tom haunting me. I'd found a small apartment online, a cozy one-bedroom in Capitol Hill with a view of the city skyline. It wasn't much, but it was mine, paid for with the house money that Karen and Tom had tried to steal. The landlord, a kind older woman named Ruth, handed me the keys with a smile. "You look like you're starting over," she said, her eyes crinkling with warmth. "I am," I admitted, and the words felt like a vow. The first few days were a blur of unpacking, buying essentials, and exploring the city. Seattle was alive in a way my small town never was. Coffee shops buzzing with artists, streets lined with murals, the air thick with possibility. I felt like I could breathe again, like I was waking up from a long, suffocating dream. But the past wasn't done with me. A week after I settled in, I got an email from Tom. The subject line was simple: "I'm sorry." I hesitated, my finger hovering over the delete button. But curiosity won. His words were a jumble of regret and excuses how he'd let Karen manipulate him, how he never meant for things to go so far, how he missed me. He begged me to come back, to fix things. I read it twice, then deleted it. His apologies were too late, too hollow. I wasn't that woman anymore, the one who'd forgive and forget. Karen, predictably, was less subtle. She sent a barrage of texts, each one angrier than the last. "You're selfish." One read, "You destroyed our family." Another, "You'll pay for this." I blocked her number, but her words lingered, a reminder of the venom she carried. I wondered what she was doing now, where she was living, how she and Tom were coping with their plans' collapse. Part of me wanted to know. Part of me didn't care. I threw myself into rebuilding my life. I started freelancing again, picking up design projects for local businesses. My portfolio, untouched during the chaos with Tom and Karen, became my lifeline. Each new client, each finished project, was a brick in the foundation of my new self. I met people artists, writers, dreamers who welcomed me into their world. For the first time in years, I felt like I belonged, but the scars were still there. At night, when the city quieted, I'd lie awake, replaying the fire, Tom's betrayal, Karen's smirk. I'd sold the house to protect myself, but it was more than that. It was a declaration of war. They'd tried to take everything, and I'd taken it back. Still, the cost was heavy. I missed the life I'd thought I had, the love I'd thought was real. One evening, I got a call from Sarah. "You need to hear this," she said, her voice tense. She'd been keeping tabs on Tom and Karen through mutual contacts. Apparently, they'd tried to sue me, claiming I'd sold the house illegally. The case was thrown out. My name was on the deed. The sale was airtight. But Karen wasn't giving up. She'd been spreading lies around town, painting me as the villain, saying I'd stolen her inheritance. "Let her talk," I said, my voice steady. "She's got nothing left to take." Sarah laughed, a sound that warmed me. "You're tougher than you look, Emily." "I'm learning," I replied. The truth was, I was still finding my strength. Seattle was my fresh start, but it wasn't a magic fix. I had to rebuild trust in myself, in others. I started therapy, something I'd never considered before. My therapist, a gentle woman named Clara, helped me unpack the anger, the grief, the guilt. "You didn't just lose a house," she said during one session. "You lost a version of yourself. Now you get to decide who you want to be." That idea stuck with me. I wasn't just running from Karen and Tom. I was running towards something. A life where I set the terms, where I didn't let greed or betrayal define me. I started painting again, a hobby I'd abandoned after marrying Tom. My apartment walls slowly filled with canvases' bold colors, abstract shapes, emotions I couldn't yet put into words. One day, while sketching in a park, I met Lena, a photographer with a laugh that lit up the gloom. We clicked instantly, bonding over art and coffee. She invited me to a local gallery event, and I went, nervous but excited. The room was packed with creative types, their energy infectious. For the first time, I felt like I was part of something bigger, something real. Lena became my first real friend in Seattle. She didn't know my past, didn't need to. She saw me as I was now Emily, the artist, the survivor, the woman finding her way. We spent weekends exploring the city, snapping photos, sharing dreams. She reminded me what it felt like to trust, to laugh, to live. But Karen's shadow lingered. A month into my new life, I got a Laterno return address, but I knew her handwriting. Inside was a single sentence: "You can't run forever." My stomach twisted, but I didn't panic. I showed it to Sarah, who advised me to keep it as evidence, but not to engage. "She's desperate," Sarah said. "Let her drown in it." I took her advice, but I also took precautions. I changed my number, locked down my social media, and asked Ruth to keep an eye out for strangers. Karen might be unhinged, but I wasn't going to let her scare me. Not again. As winter settled over Seattle, I felt a shift. The city, with its gray skies and vibrant heart, was becoming home. I wasn't just surviving anymore, I was living. And Karen and Tom, they were fading, their greed a distant memory. I'd sold the house, but I'd bought something far more valuable: my freedom. Winter in Seattle was relentless, the rain a constant companion, but I found comfort in its rhythm. My apartment was starting to feel like home, with my paintings on the walls and a small collection of thrift store furniture that carried no memories of Tom or Karen. I was building a life, piece by piece, and it felt good, fragile, but good. My freelance work was picking up, and I'd landed a big contract with a local cafe chain to redesign their branding. The work was demanding, but it kept my mind busy, away from the what-ifs that crept in at night. Lena was a constant presence, dragging me to art shows or cozy diners when I got too lost in my head. "You're allowed to be happy, you know," she'd say, her eyes twinkling. And slowly, I started to believe her. But the past has a way of clawing its way back. One gray morning, I found a package on my doorstep, no label, no note, just a plain brown box. My heart sank as I opened it, revealing a charred remnant of my favorite scarf, the one Karen had tossed into the fire. Tucked inside was a photo of me and Tom on our wedding day, my face scratched out with a pen. The message was clear: Karen wasn't done. I called Sarah immediately, my hands shaking as I described the package. "It's harassment now," she said, her voice sharp. "We can file a restraining order. This needs to stop." I agreed, but the fear was back, a cold knot in my chest. I'd moved 2,000 miles to escape, but Karen's reach felt endless. Still, I refused to let her win. I filed the restraining order, documenting every text, every threat, every piece of evidence. The process was draining, but it gave me a sense of control. I wasn't the victim anymore, I was fighting back. Lena insisted I stay with her for a few days, just to be safe. Her apartment was a chaotic mix of camera gear and vintage records, but it felt like a sanctuary. We stayed up late, talking about everything but the package. She told me about her own battles, family drama, a bad breakup, and I realized I wasn't alone in carrying scars. "You're stronger than you think," she said one night, passing me a glass of wine. "You left. That's not nothing." Her words stayed with me as I returned to my apartment, the restraining order in place. I installed a security camera, a small act of defiance. Karen could try to scare me, but I wasn't hiding anymore. I kept working, kept painting, kept living. The cafe project was a success, and the owner offered me a part-time gig as their in-house designer. It wasn't the life I'd planned, but it was mine, and it was enough. Then came the call that changed everything. It was Sarah, her voice urgent. "Emily, Tom's in Seattle. He's been asking around about you." My stomach dropped. "What does he want?" "I don't know," she said, "but he's been seen at a bar near your neighborhood. Be careful." I didn't sleep that night, my mind racing with possibilities. Was Tom working with Karen? Was he here to beg, to threaten, to try to take what little I had left? I checked the security camera obsessively, jumping at every shadow. Lena offered to stay over, but I refused. This was my fight. The next evening, I saw him. I was walking home from the cafe, the streetlights casting long shadows, when I spotted Tom across the street, his familiar slouch unmistakable. He didn't see me at first, but when he did, his face lit up with a mix of relief and desperation. "Emily," he called, jogging toward me. I stopped, my heart pounding, but I didn't run. "What do you want, Tom?" I asked, my voice cold. "I just want to talk," he said, his hands raised like he was approaching a wild animal. "I messed up. I know that. I need you." I laughed, a sharp, bitter sound. "You need me, or you need my money, my house." He flinched, his eyes darting away. "It wasn't like that. Karen, she pushed me. I didn't know how to stop her." "You didn't want to," I said, stepping closer, my anger rising. "You let her burn my clothes. You tried to steal my home. You chose her over me." "I was wrong," he whispered, his voice breaking. "I love you, Em. I always have." The words hit me like a slap, but they didn't hurt, not anymore. They were empty, a ghost of the promises he'd broken. "You don't love me," I said. "You love what I had. And it's gone now. I'm gone." I turned and walked away, his pleas fading behind me. I didn't look back. For the first time, I felt the weight of his betrayal lift, replaced by a fierce clarity. Tom wasn't my future. He was my past. I told Lena everything that night, over takeout and bad TV. She listened, her eyes wide, then hugged me tight. "You're a badass, Emily," she said. "Don't forget it." I smiled, feeling the truth of it. I was a badass. I'd faced Karen's fire, Tom's betrayal, and I was still standing. Seattle was my home now, and I was building something new, something they couldn't touch. But Karen wasn't done. A week later, I got a call from an unknown number. I almost ignored it, but something made me pick up. It was a lawyer, representing Karen. She was suing me again, this time for emotional distress. I laughed out loud, the absurdity of it breaking through my fear. Sarah was ready, her legal team already preparing to crush the case. Karen had no thing, no evidence, no claim, just her own desperation. As I hung up, I felt a strange peace. Karen could keep fighting, but she'd already lost. I'd sold the house, walked away, and built something better. She and Tom were trapped in their greed, while I was free. Spring arrived in Seattle, painting the city in shades of green and hope. My life was taking shape, steady job, a growing circle of friends, and a sense of purpose I hadn't felt in years. My paintings were selling, small pieces at first, but enough to make me believe I could do this, be an artist, be myself, be enough. Karen's lawsuit was a distant annoyance, a gnat buzzing at the edge of my life. Sarah handled it with her usual efficiency, and within weeks, it was dismissed. Karen had no case, no evidence, just a grudge that was eating her alive. I didn't gloat, but I felt a quiet satisfaction. She'd tried to break me, and she'd failed. Tom, meanwhile, had vanished. After our confrontation, he'd stopped calling, stopped showing up. Part of me wondered where he was, how he was coping. But that part was small, shrinking with each passing day. I didn't need to know. I didn't need him. Lena and I started a project together, combining my designs with her photography for a local art show. It was a risk, putting myself out there, but it felt right. The show was a success, with several pieces selling and an offer to exhibit at a bigger gallery. For the first time, I saw a future where I wasn't just surviving, I was thriving. But the past always finds a way to knock. One afternoon, while I was sketching at a cafe, my phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. It was a grainy shot of me at the art show, smiling with Lena. The caption read, "You can't hide." My blood ran cold. "Karen." I showed the photo to Sarah, who was furious. "She's escalating," she said. "This is stalking. We need to tighten the restraining order." I nodded, but the fear was back, sharper this time. Karen wasn't just angry, she was obsessed. I started varying my routine, avoiding the cafe, checking my security camera daily. Lena noticed my tension and insisted on staying close. "She's not getting to you," she said fiercely. "Not on my watch." I tried to focus on the art show, on my work, on the life I was building. But Karen's presence lingered, a shadow I couldn't shake. Then, one night, it came to a head. I was walking home from Lena's, the streets quiet, when I heard footsteps behind me. I turned, expecting a stranger, but it was Karen, her face gaunt, her eyes wild. "Emily," she said, her voice low, almost a growl. "You think you're so clever, don't you?" I backed away, my hand on my phone, ready to call 911. "Karen, leave me alone. You're breaking the restraining order." She laughed, a harsh, broken sound. "You took everything. The house, Tom, my future. You don't get to walk away." "I already did," I said, my voice steady despite the fear. "You did this to yourself." She lunged, but I was faster, dodging and hitting the call button. The police were there in minutes, their lights flashing as they cuffed her. She screamed, cursing my name, but I didn't flinch. I'd faced her fire before, and I was still here. The arrest was a turning point. Karen was charged with stalking and violating the restraining order. Sarah pushed for the maximum penalty, and I testified, my voice clear, my story unwavering. The judge was sympathetic, and Karen was sentenced to community service and a stricter restraining order. She was forbidden from contacting me, from coming near me. It wasn't jail, but it was enough. Tom reached out one last time, a letter sent through Sarah. He didn't apologize. Not really, just a vague plea for understanding, a claim that he was lost without me. I didn't respond. He was a stranger now, a man who'd chosen greed over love. With Karen neutralized and Tom gone, I felt a weight lift. I threw myself into my art, my friendships, my new life. The gallery exhibit was a hit, and I started getting commissions from across the city. Lena and I planned a trip to Portland, a chance to explore and dream bigger. I was healing, slowly, but surely. One evening, as I painted in my apartment, the city skyline glowing outside, I realized something. I wasn't just surviving anymore. I was living, fully, fiercely. Karen and Tom had tried to destroy me, but they'd only made me stronger. I'd sold the house, left the life they wanted to steal, and found something better myself. I put down my brush and looked at the canvas, a swirl of blues and golds, hope and resilience. This was my story now, and I was writing it. Summer in Seattle was a revelation: clear skies, warm breezes, and a city that felt like it was celebrating my rebirth. My art was gaining traction, with a local magazine featuring my work alongside Lena's photos. I was no longer just Emily, the woman who'd lost everything. I was Emily, the artist, the survivor, the one who'd fought back and won. Karen's arrest had quieted her, at least for now. The restraining order held, and I hadn't heard from her in months. Tom, too, had faded into silence, his letter unanswered. I didn't wish them illy, just didn't wish them anything. They were part of a life I'd left behind, a chapter I'd closed. My days were full, a rhythm of work, art, and friendship. Lena and I were planning a joint exhibit, a bigger one this time, with a gallery downtown. The prospect was thrilling, but it also brought a new kind of pressure. I was putting myself out there, vulnerable in a way I hadn't been since the fire. But vulnerability, I was learning, wasn't weakness, it was courage. One afternoon, while I was sketching ideas for the exhibit, Ruth, my landlord, knocked on my door. "You've got a visitor," she said, her brow furrowed. "Says she's a friend, but I don't know her." My stomach twisted. I followed Ruth downstairs, bracing for Karen, but it wasn't her. It was Claire, an old friend from my hometown, someone I hadn't seen since before the fire. She looked nervous, her hands twisting together as she stood in the lobby. "Emily," she said, her voice soft. "I heard what happened. I needed to see you." We sat in a nearby cafe, and she told me everything. After I'd left, Karen had spiraled, blaming everyone but herself. She'd moved in with Tom, who was barely holding it together, working odd jobs and drinking too much. The town was buzzing with gossip, most of it pitying me, some of it condemning Karen and Tom. Claire had come to check on me, to make sure I was okay. "I'm better than okay," I told her, and I meant it. I showed her my paintings, told her about the exhibit, about Lena and my new life. Her eyes welled up, and she hugged me. "You're incredible," she said. "I don't know how you did it." I didn't either. Sometimes. But I had step by step, choice by choice. Claire's visit was a reminder of the life I'd left, but also of the strength I'd found. She promised to stay in touch, and when she left, I felt a pang of gratitude. Not everyone from my past was a traitor. The exhibit was a month away, and Lena and I were in overdrive, finalizing pieces, meeting with the gallery owner, and promoting the event. It was exhilarating, but exhausting, and it brought up old fears. What if I failed? What if this new life wasn't as solid as I thought? Clara, my therapist, helped me navigate those doubts. "You're not that woman anymore," she said. "You've built this. Trust it." I did. The night of the exhibit, the gallery was packed, the air humming with excitement. My paintings hung alongside Lena's photos, a story of resilience and beauty. I wore a dress I'd bought myself, a deep blue that felt like a statement. People milled around, praising our work, asking questions. I felt seen, not as a victim, but as an artist, a creator. Then I saw her, Karen. She was standing in the corner, her face half hidden by a scarf, but I knew it was her. My heart raced, but I didn't panic. I signaled to Lena, who called security. Karen didn't resist when they approached, just glared at me, her eyes burning with the same hatred I'd seen that night by the fire. "You're nothing," she hissed as they escorted her out. I didn't respond. She didn't deserve my words, my anger. She was a ghost, clinging to a fight she'd already lost. Security reported her to the police for violating the restraining order, and I let Sarah handle the rest. I wasn't going to let her ruin this night. The exhibit was a triumph. We sold nearly every piece, and the gallery owner offered us a follow-up show. Lena and I celebrated with champagne, laughing until our sides hurt. I looked around at the life I'd built, friends, art, a future, and felt a swell of pride. This was mine, and no one could take it. Later, as I walked home under the stars, I thought about Karen's words. "You're nothing." She was wrong. I was everything stronger, braver, freer than I'd ever been. I'd sold the house, left the betrayal behind, and found a life worth living. And that was enough. The second exhibit came and went. cementing my place in Seattle's art scene. I wasn't just surviving anymore, I was thriving. My name whispered in galleries. My work sought after by collectors. Lena and I were already planning our next project, a collaboration that would take us to Portland, maybe even San Francisco. The future was wide open, and I was ready to run toward it. Karen's final appearance at the gallery had been her last. She'd violated the restraining order again. And this time, the consequences were steeper: 6 months in jail, a fine, and a permanent ban from contacting me. Sarah called it a victory. But to me, it was closure. Karen was a storm that had passed, leaving me stronger in its wake. Tom, I learned through Claire, had moved away, chasing some vague dream in another state. I didn't care where he was or what he was doing. He was a shadow, fading with each step I took into my new life. I'd loved him once, but that love had been built on a lie, and I was done mourning it. My apartment was now a home, filled with color and light. My paintings covered the walls, each one a piece of my journey: grief, anger, hope, triumph. I'd started teaching art classes at a community center, sharing my passion with kids who reminded me of myself, dreamers searching for their voice. It was healing, in a way I hadn't expected, to give back, to build something bigger than myself. Lena and I took that trip to Portland, spending a week exploring galleries, eating street food, and dreaming up new projects. On the last night, as we sat by the river, she turned to me, her eyes serious. "You know, Emily, you've changed. Not just since you got here, but since I met you. You're unstoppable." I laughed, but her words hit deep. Unstoppable. That's what I felt, what I was becoming. The fire, the betrayal, the loss. They hadn't destroyed me. They'd forged me. Back in Seattle, I kept building. I signed a lease on a bigger apartment, one with a studio space for my art. I hired an assistant to help with my freelance work, freeing me to focus on painting. I even started dating again, small steps into a world I'd thought was closed to me. It wasn't about replacing Tom, it was about opening my heart to new possibilities. One evening, as I painted in my new studio, I got a call from Claire. She'd heard from a mutual friend that Karen was out of jail, living in a halfway house, her spirit broken. "She's not the same," Claire said. "It's like she burned herself out." I nodded, unsurprised. Greed had consumed her, just as it had consumed Tom. They'd thought they could take everything from me, but they'd only taken what I was willing to let go. The house was gone, but I'd gained so much more: a life, a purpose, a future. I hung up and turned back to my canvas, a vibrant mix of reds and oranges, a fire that wasn't destructive but alive, full of possibility. I thought about the woman I'd been a year ago, standing on that lawn, watching her life burn. She was gone, replaced by someone stronger, someone who'd chosen herself. As I painted, I realized this was my story, not the one Karen and Tom had tried to write, but the one I was creating. I'd sold the house, walked away from their greed, and built something better. I wasn't just surviving. I was living, fully, fiercely, freely. And that was everything.